Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan. We're at the Motor City Madmouth. And yes, it is Thursday night. What is it? Time for some football. A lot of it. And we're going to get ready for another week of it. And with me tonight, the X-Man, Xavier McKnight. How you doing? You and I can have a busy couple of days, aren't we, X-Man?
Yes, we are, and we hope everybody's looking forward to these next couple of days. With Scott and myself, we have some great content we're doing on this show tonight, and we're going to bring it to you again. You know, we actually show up when it matters. We show up in the clutch. We don't choke on things, unlike some people. Great
segue for Mel Farr, my former running back for the Los Angeles Rams. Glad to have you back, Mel.
Great to be back. Yeah, that wasn't very subtle at all. Everybody knows who the X-Man is talking about.
Yeah, no, that's true. But meanwhile, next week we're going to be doing a lot more Zoom broadcasts via the South Florida YouTube channel. So for all you folks that haven't subscribed to the South Florida YouTube channel, I would advise you to do that if you want to see all of us. With that said, Mel Farr will be making his Zoom debut next week. Xavier McKnight, we've had a few of these under our belt. We're getting better at it, right, X-Man?
This is true. This is very true. You know, once again, and Mel said this before we even began the broadcast tonight, this is just a wonderful time of year for us. You know, usually under normal circumstances, we have the NFL, we have college football, we have baseball. But this year, because of the pandemic, it had to be mixed up a little, and we got some baseball, some college football, some NFL, NBA games that matter, NHL matchups that matter. I mean, you hate what the pandemic has done, but for the sports world, this may have been a blessing in disguise for so much to be going on at some point. And I hate to even look at this pandemic as a blessing in disguise because it's been awful. But for the sports world and the way they've been able to come back, it's been a wonderful thing.
Yeah, you got an equinox of sports where everybody's active, and that's not the worst thing in the world. Doesn't have to be July 4th. Doesn't have to be Memorial Day. Labor Day works too. So with that said, I got a question for both of you guys, okay? You ready? Why are the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns playing a primetime game on Thursday night? We have two number one picks, Baker Mayfield and Joe Burrow. Why, Mel? Why, Xavier? Why do we got these guys tonight? Is this an all-Ohio night where the rest of the United States can tune off NBC? All right, Mel, you lead off with this one.
Well, I think storylines, I think it's because of the storylines. Obviously, with the Bengals having the overall first pick in the draft, and it gives everybody an opportunity to look at the kid out of LSU, to take a look at Joe Burrow, and then everybody's interested in whether what Baker Mayfield's going to do. I mean, if he's going to be a train wreck, or if he's going to finally come around and be the kind of player that Cleveland expected him to be when they drafted him number one overall. So I think it's just because of the storylines. That's the only reason. Because obviously Cleveland has some talent on their team. There's some prognosticators that predict them to make the playoffs this year. Obviously, we don't think the Bengals are going to do anything this year, but I think there are some people that think that Cleveland can do well, but it's all going to rest on what kind of production they're going to be able to get from the quarterback position. Now, with the running backs that they have, I would put less pressure on the quarterback and really get into that running game and establish that running game and take some of that pressure off of Baker Mayfield and make those really make those guys earn their money. Chubb and Hunt. Chubb has been there. I think this is his third year out of Georgia. He's a second-round draft pick. I loved him when he came out of Georgia. I loved the pick. I loved the back. And obviously, Kareem Hunt, that 1-2 punch, you need to take advantage of that. I know they got some skilled guys at the receiver position. I think the tight end went down. I think he's on IR right now, but they still got skilled guys at the wide receiver. We know this is a passing league. But I think they need to take a step back and really look at what they have and try to establish a run game. But I think the only reason why we're watching this game on Thursday night is just because of the storylines.
Xavier McKnight, what's your take?
Well, it's not the most exciting game in the world. That part we do understand. But this is the battle of the current reigning number one overall pick, Joe Burrow, versus a former number one overall pick, Baker Mayfield. And because the state of Ohio has to deal with not having Ohio State football for at least another month, this is what they have to settle for, as well as all those high school football matchups within their state as well. So it's not the most exciting matchup. the key storyline going into this game, honestly, might be the fact that Bengals team president Mike Brown is going to miss a home game for the first time ever. And this is due to concerns about COVID-19. He's been advised to stay at home. Other than that, I don't really have too much more to say about this game. Baker Mayfield continues to put his foot in his mouth. He continues to have all these commercials, and he's a guy that hasn't done anything in this league yet. And if he loses this game tonight, but especially if he is thoroughly outplayed by Joe Burrow, it is very safe to say that Baker Mayfield will be on the hot seat, and the Cleveland Browns organization may go into #Tank for Sunshine mode. For those of you who don't know, that stands for Trevor Lawrence. And that would be another quarterback coming into Cleveland over the numerous amount of quarterbacks that have come back since the Browns franchise came back in 1999. I don't really have much to say about this matchup, except for the fact that I'm glad A.J. Green is finally healthy and can play. And that's pretty much it, because I don't have any expectations for either of these teams right now.
All right, so I'm going to throw two scores at you. We don't have to go very long on this. I'm just going to throw a couple. Last week, Sunday, the Baltimore Ravens 38, the Cleveland Browns 6. Were the Browns 32-point? Was it that bad? Or they that bad? Or was Baltimore that good? I mean, seems like a lopsided score for a game that certainly appeared to be a lot closer on paper than it obviously turned out in the end result. I don't care which one of you guys comments on it. Both of you, for all I care. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and I'll take this one first, Mel, and I'll simply just say it like this. I don't want to take anything away from the Baltimore Ravens. They are viewed by many as the favorite to come out of the AFC to represent the Super Bowl, even over the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. And they're also viewed by many as the team that will win this year's Super Bowl. So I don't want to take anything away from Lamar Jackson and that supporting cast that he has and that great defense that the Ravens have been able to construct and put together. But Baker Mayfield was awful in week 1. And that is the big takeaway that I have from that game. I understand that Baltimore is a dominant team and they're one of the favorites to come out of the AFC, but the Browns have entirely too much talent, especially on the offensive side of the football, to go out there and play the way that they played. And I understand that it was Kevin Stefanski's first game. But when you talk about having Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. and David Njoku and Austin Hooper and Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield at quarterback, and then you go to the opposite side of the football and you've got guys like Myles Garrett, you've got good linebackers, you've got a good secondary, and you go out there and you play like that. This isn't to take anything away from the Ravens, but this is more about bad Browns to me. Mel, maybe you have a different take on this.
No, I mean, I agree with you. It just tells you that, there's been some rumblings. They've been talking about Odell possibly being traded, not being happy with the amount of touches that he's getting in the production. I think that they're still dysfunctional. They're still a very dysfunctional group, and I think obviously because of their quarterback, because he's not the ideal leader. I guess you could say brought in a new coach this year. This is Baker's third head coach in his third season, or it's going to be his fourth head coach in his third year. So they're trying to obviously make this work, and they're going to give him every opportunity to make it work. We know they have plenty of talent on the football team. It's not a talent deficit with Cleveland, because like I said, a lot of people have picked Cleveland to do well, to go into the playoffs, go in the playoffs this year. But Baltimore is such a good team, all around. I mean, from the quarterback position, defensive, they're fundamentally sound. Special teams, they play well. So and again, it was the first game, so let's not read too much in it. They didn't have any OTAs. They haven't had any. He's got a new offensive system in. They had no OTAs. They had no preseason. So let's give it 4 weeks, and then we can revisit it and see what the Cleveland Browns look like.
Okay, let's talk about the other.
Here's what I'll say in regards to that, and not to cut you off, Scott. Here's what I'll say. If the Browns come out and they play super spectacular tonight, I'm not going to read too much into that either because I expect the Cincinnati Bengals to be all the Bengals here. I'm going to look at that the same way that I looked at what Pittsburgh went into New York and did on Monday night. I'm not overly impressed because it's the Giants. I expect the Giants to be terrible this year. But I need to see some form of improvement and just some type of fight. Because there was absolutely no fight that was really shown from the Cleveland Browns on Sunday.
Okay. Let's look at the other score of last week. Chargers 16, the Bengals 13. Was that a positive for Joe Burrow that they were at least competitive in this football game?
I mean,
it is, but
probably so. But
go ahead.
I mean, I don't think the Chargers are. I'm not real high on the Chargers. I mean, I've never been as high on Tyrod Taylor as other people are. The Chargers have some pieces. Obviously, they lost a running back. They lost their longtime quarterback over there. And again, like I said, they handed over the reins to Tyrod Taylor. They did draft a kid, but he probably won't play this year out of Oregon. But I'm not real high on the Chargers. Again, I had to see a little bit more. But obviously for Joe and his confidence, that was good. That they competed, they fought. It was a close game. But I'm not reading much into that victory by the Chargers.
Yeah, judging from what I've heard so far, I think Joe Burrow, they say, is going to be a stud. I think the Bengals have a good quarterback, and as long as they can maintain coaching stability, which Baker Mayfield has not had, I'd give him a puncher's chance. But I think it'd be intriguing. The best part about my job, guys, is I have 2 broadcasts. I don't have to worry about it. I don't care. I'll take the words of my experts. Fair enough? All right? We have a doubleheader tonight. With that said, okay, let's move on to the next thing. Do you have a problem with Bruce Arians calling out Tom Brady in the media after throwing 2 interceptions in a 34-23 loss Sunday? Brett Favre did. Bill Belichick used to do it in the building. Mel, you're a former player. Do you like being called out in the media, or would you rather get chewed out inside the building? Pick your poison.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I always did when I had situations with my coaches, and everybody has to be coached differently, but I always made it known. I'd have them look up there in the stands and, see that lady sitting over there? That's my wife. See that little kid over there? That's my daughter. See that other one? That's my son. I'm not a kid. I'm a grown man. You can talk to me like a grown man. You ain't got to yell and cuss at me and so forth and so on. That's just the way that I was. I don't respond well to being cussed out. That's just me. I respond better to someone having communication with me. Now, from the media, they want people to be authentic. Bruce Arians was authentic at that particular time. Right or wrong, he was authentic. Maybe him and Tom had talked about it. Maybe they have some type of agreement. But that's Bruce Arians being Bruce Arians. You want him to be authentic when they have any. I mean, do you want him to be that way, or you want him to be like Belichick and we'll just say on to Cincinnati? We're not going to. He's not going to answer your questions. He's just on to the next game.
Right.
So, as the media, you can't have it both ways. Okay. If you want the guy to be authentic, he was being authentic. Now, don't jump on the guy for being authentic.
Right.
That's who he is. You asked a question, he answered it. He didn't say on to whoever it is they're playing this week. He answered the question. So, as a player, would I have a problem with it? Probably not, because he didn't disrespect Tom in any way. He just simply said what Tom already knew. Those are 2 bad throws. Now, whether Mike Evans ran the wrong route, I mean, that looked like a pass that shouldn't have been thrown anyway. There were a lot of bodies in there in that pass over the middle. There were a lot of bodies there. We all know anytime you're late and behind on one of those out routes, it can go the other way real quick. And he was late, and it was behind. It was behind him, receiver. So that was a bad throw. And he's human. He's entitled to make a bad throw. He made a bad throw. He made 2 bad throws. He knows that.
So you don't have a problem being called out in the media over something like that at all, rather than.
I don't think he was being called out. I think Bruce Arians was being honest. I think he was being authentic, and I think Tom knew nobody's harder on Tom Brady than Tom Brady is on himself. I guarantee you that. He didn't win. He hasn't gone to 9 Super Bowls and won 6 of them because he's easy on himself. I guarantee you, there's nobody more critical of Tom Brady than Tom Brady himself.
So, in other words, you're telling me is Tom Brady's not making a big deal out of it. It's no big deal versus some of the butt chewing.
No, the media is making a big deal out of it. He's not even thinking about it anymore. He's moved on. He's getting prepared for the next game.
Right. Well, yeah, you're right. The media is definitely talking about it. After all, isn't that what we do in the media? Is we talk, right? We keep these broadcasts interesting. Oh, Xavier McKnight, what do you think? Do you think that Bruce Arians calling out Tom Brady? Do you have a problem with that being called out in the media? And I think from what I hear, too, that Bruce Arians backtracked a little about one of those throws when he had a chance to look at it again. But regardless, the main question is being called out in the media.
It was a bad throw, regardless. There was a lot of people in there.
Right.
I mean, he would have to thread a needle. I'm sure. I mean, right. Throw it away, or I'm sure that somebody had to be open. If there's three people covering Mike Evans right there, somebody had to be open somewhere.
Right. What's your take, X-Man?
So the only thing I have a problem with what Bruce Arians said was referring to Tom Brady during those comments as looking unmotivated. That's the only thing I have a problem with, because this is Tom Brady we're talking about, the 6th-round draft pick, 6-time Super Bowl champion, went to 9 Super Bowls, that psycho Tom mentality. The last thing I think Tom Brady is unmotivated. I have no issue whatsoever with Bruce Arians criticizing Tom Brady's game on Sunday, because Tom Brady didn't play a good game on Sunday. And some guys in the media, they like to spin it, they like to say, but he did have a couple of good throws, and he didn't look as awful as they're trying to make sense. He didn't look like the Tom Brady that you're used to. He looked closer to the Tom Brady that was in New England last year, where people were beginning to really ask the question, is he washed up? That's how he looked on Sunday. Now, let's go back to what we previously said about the Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cincinnati Bengals. I don't want to read too much into what I saw in Week 1, because those are the New Orleans Saints. And the New Orleans Saints are viewed by many as the favorite to come out of the NFC. Tom Brady's probably not going to face a better team, at least in the conference this year, than who he faced on Sunday.
Right.
So I don't want to read too much into this, because now, if they go up against Carolina on Sunday and they play the same way and they lose that game, that's something to be a little more concerned about. Because the Carolina Panthers as a whole, they're rebuilding, but their defense is in a total rebuild. That'll be something to be concerned about. But I'm not reading too much into Tom Brady and the Bucs going out and losing to the Drew Brees-led New Orleans Saints on Sunday with a team full of veterans who have been on that team for years, and them bringing back a guy like Malcolm Jenkins, who was a part of their Super Bowl run in 2009, and bringing in a savvy veteran like Emmanuel Sanders. No, I'm not reading too much in it whatsoever. As far as Bruce Arians' comments, though, the only thing I had a problem with was him saying that Tom Brady looked unmotivated. That was it. I don't have a problem with him criticizing Tom Brady's game.
Yeah, I guess when you're accustomed to getting chewed out by Bill Belichick in the building, then maybe, and knowing that Belichick is a tough cookie for sure, then Bruce Arians doing it in a different way. But from what I've read recently, Tom Brady said, I'm the player, he's the coach, end of story, basically. So it probably doesn't matter. I know Brett Favre is part of us now. He's talking in media. He had a problem with it, but then again, Brett Favre is like us. Now he's paid to make his opinions, right? And he can talk about past experiences. Do you take any stock in what Brett Favre had to say?
No, I mean, Brett Favre wanted to be coddled, too. He probably didn't like to be criticized in the media, too. But when you make, everybody's fair game. I mean, you coach everybody differently, and you try to reach other people differently. Bruce Arians, what he did, it was calculated. He didn't just say it just to be saying it. But he said the truth. He didn't, but again, it wasn't an indictment of Tom Brady. He made 2 bad throws. That's all he said. Now, I didn't hear the thing about him being unmotivated. I didn't hear him saying that. He looked unmotivated, but I heard comments about the throws. The question was asked about it, and he answered it, and he moved on from there. He made 2 bad throws. I mean, what was he supposed to say? I mean, there are some things that he could have said better. He could have, the thing that he said about, they didn't show us anything that we hadn't prepared for. That makes it seem like it was Tom's fault, not his fault. Whereas, a coach should say, hey, we need to coach better, we need to play better in all positions, from quarterback, offensively, defensively, special teams, we need to play better, and we need to coach better. And leave it at that.
All right, we'll go on to another subject. I only got 2 more things we'll talk about the NFL. We're going to take it to the college ranks. How's that, guys? All right, ready? Le'Veon Bell placed on the IR with a hamstring injury. The move came one day after head coach Adam Gase conceded that he could be sidelined a couple weeks with an ailment. Gase actually regretted putting Ball back on the field while he was hurt. to me, Adam Gase has made mistakes. But how the heck do you put a guy back on the field with a hamstring injury? Really? What was going through the mind of Adam Gase? Because apparently common sense wasn't one of them. All right, Mel, you played the position.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know how Le'Veon could even play with a hamstring injury. I mean, if you've ever had a hamstring injury, it's difficult to even be out there. And as a coach, it's just more dysfunctional Jets. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised because of where it's coming from. It's just the dysfunction of the New York Jets. I've never been impressed with Adam Gase as a head coach. He may be a good offensive coordinator, but not all offensive coordinators are good head coaches. So, he might have bit off more than he can chew being the head coach. And this might be a little bit more than what he bargained for, but he is the head coach over there, and he's doing I guess the best job that he possibly can. But again, the media asked a question, he answered the question, and now he's getting killed for it. Obviously there's a lot more than just him. I think the medical staff would have to be involved. They should have came to him and said something. Hey, Le'Veon's out or something like that. I mean, he's got a lot of things going on a Sunday that he has to deal with, and he has to get some help in order to make those decisions. And if the medical staff would come up to him and say, hey, Le'Veon Bell's out, I'm sure that Le'Veon Bell wouldn't have been out there.
Yeah, that was bad. I mean, Frank Gore is going to be obviously getting more carries this week. Xavier McKnight, what are your thoughts about the lack of...
37 years old, you and I could get out there and do that.
Well, yeah, we probably could. I could do it at 57, right? I don't even know. I think my wife is laughing at me in the background. Yeah, dream on, motor mouth. All right. But meanwhile, Xavier McKnight, what are your thoughts about Adam Gase making that bit of a mistake there, a big bit of a mistake?
The New York Jets are a circus. They're a poorly ran organization. And when you're a poorly ran organization, you do baffling, befuddling, and just flat out stupid things. I'm not surprised that Adam Gase did something like this. The Jets are an absolute mess, and things are not going to change there until maybe they even get new ownership. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if it's the general manager. I don't know if it's the owner itself. I'm looking beyond the coach at this point because they've had issues for years, and they've gone from coach to coach. So it's obviously not the coaching situation here anymore. It's something up with the front office of that organization, the culture of that organization. It's absolutely awful. And, when you continue to just trade all your players away, it doesn't set a good precedent. And the guy who I honestly feel for in the most of this, to be honest with you, besides Le'Veon Bell himself, is Sam Darnold. Because I really feel like Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than people actually believe that he is. But he's got to deal with this mess of an organization. And I don't believe he's going to have a chance to prove himself as a quality NFL quarterback unless he gets up out of there.
Okay, that's fair. All right, so let's go on to the final NFL topic. Okay, the NFL had 7 positive virus tests from September 6th through the 12th. 7 doesn't seem like a lot, but now we got a number. Before we didn't have any. Mel, what's your take on that?
I think that's good. That's good news for the NFL. I mean, you think about the number of players and staff, support staff, coaches, and all that kind of stuff. I think that these leagues have shown how you can continue to play the games and do it safely. And so, I think that bodes well for them that they only had the few number of tests, and the guys are doing what they need to do off the field and taking care of their business so that games can continue on.
Okay. Xavier?
It's good news that the numbers are in the single digits, but it's not good news that they have positive cases that are coming out. When you have the NBA and the NHL playing in bubbles, and they've been there for months now, and they haven't had any positive cases come out of either of those bubbles, from what we know. Now, there was one thing that I kept seeing on Sunday around the league in every single game. And I'm not sure if you guys took notice of this too during the post game when these games came to their end. All of these teams were breaking one of the rules that was set down when the rules for how the NFL would handle these COVID-19 protocols came out last week. One of the rules that came down was players would not be allowed to shake hands after the game, along with exchanging jerseys. I didn't see any exchanging of jerseys, but in every game that I watched, or at least that I had a chance to take a glimpse of, I saw players after the game shaking hands with each other.
Right.
Did anybody else take notice of that?
Yeah, I did, but from what I hear about the jersey situation, though, I think they're allowed to mail the jerseys back and forth. I think they got that worked out. I did notice that. I was kind of perturbed at that, thinking that you don't want as much contact as you can, especially when you're sweating and interacting like that. Mel, go ahead. What's your take on that?
I mean, they're banging up against each other all day long. A little handshake at the end of the game is not going to, it's not going to change anything. I mean, the guys are congregating in midfield and praying and doing those kind of things. So, I did notice it. The one thing that NFL did come out with, and there's going to be a stiff penalty for coaches who were not adhering to wearing the mask on the sidelines, whether it be a face shield like Andy Reid had that was all fogged up when they played on Thursday night, or some sort of face covering. But the NFL is going to come down on coaches being on the sidelines without their face covering.
Well, managers in baseball are using it for the most part, so there's no reason why the coaches shouldn't either. I don't know whether or not the face shield goes on. So, all right, let's transition over to college. And, Mel, you've talked about this on previous shows, and now I'm going to get into it more. You want to talk about a segue about actually the COVID-19 positive virus test? Here's one that really bothers me, but you've been saying it all along, Mel. The Charlotte 49er football team, University of North Carolina, Charlotte, they canceled a game against North Carolina Tar Heels because the offensive line was depleted. Let me preface those 4 words, okay? My verbal highlighter. The offensive line was depleted. They could not reset this date because there was no open date, and it's an in-state matchup that I think it's too bad that Charlotte didn't take on UNC. I think that would have been a good rivalry, outside of the ACC, an in-state rivalry. You're the biggest city in the state against the biggest university. It's too bad it didn't happen, but let's go back to the words. The offensive line was depleted. Mel, you're going to lead off with this, okay, because that was your biggest concern all along, that if you lose a key position, you're in trouble. Go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a positive test in a position group, all those people are in close proximity of one another. When you do your contact tracing, they're going to have to isolate or quarantine. So when you lose a position group like the offensive line, you don't have anybody else that you can put out there. Makes it very difficult to play a game, and that's not just at the college level. I mean, that could be a potential problem at the NFL level as well.
Oh yeah. But
I'm sure they'll find a way to make sure that they're able to continue to play the games. But it's an unfortunate situation. That's one of the things that we've talked about is what happens when an entire position group gets hit with this, and not everybody's contracted the virus in this position group. I'm not saying that. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but obviously, if they were in close contact or close proximity with the individuals that did test positive, then out of an abundance of caution, you've got to isolate or quarantine everyone. So it's unfortunate.
Xavier?
Well, this is what you were the most fearful of possibly taking place when you kept hearing about, are they going to play or are they not going to play due to COVID-19 anyway? You have to take everything under consideration. As excited as I am to have all of these sports back, I wasn't necessarily in favor of them coming back because of things like this. The things that are the most important are the health, safety, and well-being of the players, the coaches, and everybody else who's going to be involved in this. And it's a very unfortunate thing that this had to happen to the University of Charlotte, and you hope and you pray the best for those players, and you wish them the best, and especially to the ones who did test positive, whether it was one or whether it was a few of them. You don't know how people's bodies are going to respond to this virus. That's just a tricky thing to all of this. So you wish them the best, and you're disappointed that this game can't necessarily be played, but it was definitely the right call that was made here, and unfortunately it was a call that had to be made simply because they didn't have enough personnel to play at a position.
Let alone.
And you wonder how many more times are you going to see that. And it's a huge wonder when it comes down to college football in particular, because when you go back and you look at some of the games on the previous weekend, I didn't necessarily see it so much in week 1, but you saw it in week 2. And even though it's not as many as usual, some of these schools did have fans in the stands.
Yeah.
And that's something to be concerned about.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I mean, it's too bad UNC and UNC Charlotte couldn't play, but it's all about safety. Mac Brown felt bad about it. I'm sure he wanted to play the game because it's a game for the state of North Carolina with obviously the biggest school in the state versus the biggest city, but I'm sure at some point they'll get another game together. Let's move on to the next one. 3 more topics to go. At the immediately after the Sports Exchange, we got fantasy football. Tonight it'll be Ryan Skolrud and Rick Curdy, so they'll follow us afterwards. The Memphis Tigers football programs we're talking about now says 46 of its 81 positive tests are considered active. The 16th ranked Tigers have paused all football activities. Another situation which falls into the situation of this. Okay, Xavier, what's your take about Memphis football?
Once again, another unfortunate situation. You're not surprised that it happened because there really was no plan that was put together by these programs on how exactly they were going to handle all of this. Because when it comes down to the college athletes as opposed to the professionals, they're on those college campuses. There are probably students, many of them who are still on those college campuses that they come in contact with every day. And as much as you'd like for people to be vigilant and responsible, let's not kid ourselves here. These are still college students. Even though they're student athletes, they're still college students. And pandemic or not, college students are going to do what college students do. They're going to party. That's what's going to happen. And when you have things like that taking place, you're going to end up having instances like this taking place. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that those positive tests happen as a result of people going to parties. What I'm saying is that they are in a different type of environment as opposed to the professional athletes who can be in an environment where they have to isolate themselves and they don't necessarily have to interact with so many different people on a day-to-day basis. These student athletes are in these college classrooms and they're getting their meals at the cafeterias and they're walking around the campus if they're doing that, and they're coming in contact with other students who may not be getting the COVID-19 testing that they may be getting as opposed to when they go to practice and before games and all these other things that the NCAA is trying to do. They're doing everything they can to try to protect the student athletes who are playing, but you can't protect all of the students in general. And that was another one of my major concerns coming into this whole thing. So once again, you feel bad that this happened, and you just hope and pray the best for everybody who's been affected by this.
Hey, Mel, what's your take on Memphis?
We've talked about this ad nauseum. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, we have.
That this has happened. It's predictable.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise anyone. As Xavier was saying, I mean, these are kids, and
right.
Kids do sometimes what kids do, and they right. believe they're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and they don't really view this virus as a real big issue, not understanding the ramifications of contracting the virus and what that's going to do, what it could potentially, what the harm it could potentially bring to them or people around them, or family members, elderly people that may be in their family member, people
right.
in the elderly people, family members that may be in their family, or people with compromised immune system and people at high risk. So they don't think about all those things. All they think about is themselves and in that moment. Now the NFL, even though they're not in the bubble, they do have some pretty strict protocols in place that that players have to adhere to, particularly when they're traveling to another city. And they have an understanding that if something happens, it's going to affect not just them, but it's going to affect some other people. And you're talking about people's livelihoods. So I think, with the NFL, I think that they're policing themselves, because I don't think anyone wants to come down with something and take something home to their family, or, potentially miss out on losing some money. I don't know what the difference is of your pay once you're on the COVID-19 list versus being on the active roster. I don't know if there's a difference in the pay, but I guarantee you, if there's a difference in my pay, there's going to be some strong conversation with individuals if they decide that they want to go hang out and party because you're jeopardizing my paycheck. Well, you probably don't have those kind of checks and balances in the college level. And then again, they don't have the same type of, potential discipline that could come down on them like the NFL has if a player is caught in a bar or something like that, a restaurant with more than 50 people in it or something like that. They have certain things in place that, that those players will be fined a specific amount of money, a certain amount of money, if they violate the protocols that have been negotiated by the PA and the NFL.
Okay, excellent points, Mel. We'll move on to the next one, shall we? Big Ten football is set to return October 24th. It will be an 8-game regular season. Are you surprised at this reversal? Mel, why don't you lead this one off?
No, when you look at everybody else's, you look at what's going on in the South, in the SEC, and you look at the Big 12, and you look at some of the other conferences that are playing football, there's a lot of pressure on the Big Ten, and there's pressure on the Pac-12 as well to play. I mean, if all these other folks can figure out a way to do it, why can't we? And I think Xavier has talked about it before. The whole state of Ohio is playing, but Ohio State's not playing. University of Cincinnati's playing, the Bengals are playing, Cleveland Browns are playing, but Ohio State's not playing. So how is it that all those other schools have been able to figure out, or all those other institutions have been able to figure it out, but this major institution in this big conference can't figure out how to play football and do it safely? So no, I'm not surprised. Plus, they're getting a lot of pressure from the parents, the kids, the coaches were starting to speak up. There's a lot of pressure. I mean, people want football, and I'm glad to see it's coming back. I hope the Pac-12 reverses course and they're able to do something. And they got a lot of issues going on out there, other than just the COVID. I mean, they got the fires and the unhealthy air that they're dealing with out there. So there's a lot of things that are going on in the Pac-12 that may continue to delay them getting out there and playing. But hopefully they'll reverse course as well, and we'll get an opportunity to see the Pac-12 play.
All right, Xavier, what's your take on it? Then we're going to go on to Oklahoma State football.
Okay, I'm not surprised that the Big Ten is doing this. The whole time, to me, this really felt like a we'll wait and see type of thing. We'll wait and see how the ACC comes out and how things look, and we'll wait and see how some of these other schools come out and look after they play. What are their testing results looking like? Does it look like they're taking the best protocols they can possibly take to remain safe out here? And I believe at some point we'll see the Pac-12 do the same thing. We even heard a report just a few days ago that some USC players went as far as sending a letter to California Governor Gavin Newsom to please allow them to play. So at some point, the Pac-12 will come back as well this year. And it won't be in the spring. It will be at some point in the fall going into the winter. So we're going to see those mega conferences come back and play football. But I just believe for a few of them it was a wait and see. Now, as far as some of those other smaller conferences and those smaller schools, no, we won't see them come back. I don't believe so, because they don't have necessarily the financial means to be able to make a decision like that and then reverse course. But not surprised that the Big Ten is coming back. The minute that those rumblings even started coming up that there will be a revote on this entire thing, I knew. I said, okay, they're going to play football when they're going to play it sooner than everybody thinks.
Okay, we'll go on to a positive story. I think being a running back, Mel, you should be able to relate to this. Oklahoma State to make Thurman Thomas the first Ring of Honor inductee. Not Barry Sanders, but when you look at Thomas's numbers, he's a career rushing leader with 5,001 yards, 50 touchdowns, played 4 years, also played in 4 Super Bowls for the Buffalo Bills, inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2007, Bills Wall of Fame in 2005, retired jersey number 34 in 2018. How about Mr. Thomas? Should he be the first one, even though there's Barry Sanders out there? Although with those numbers, I can understand why he is the first. But Mel, go ahead. You're the running back here.
Well, I mean, you have to understand that Thurman was at Oklahoma State before Barry, and Thurman was the reason, Thurman kept Barry, running kickoffs and punts and things of that nature. Now, when Thurman left, and obviously, Barry Sanders came out and did what he did. But Thurman was the first one, and, really put Oklahoma State on the map, and some of the things that he did really expanded the notoriety of that program. And, I think it's well-deserved. Thurman was somebody who was expected to be a first-round draft pick and ended up was one of those guys, and I think he went to New York, and he ended up being one of those guys that wasn't taken into the second round.
Right.
So
the Bills
he played with a chip on his shoulder his entire career.
Right.
And, he was the first back. He was the Marshall Faulk before Marshall Faulk.
Right.
I mean, Thurman, there was nothing that Thurman Thomas couldn't do. He was a great pass catcher. He was a great running back. He was a great blocking back. As far as pass protection is concerned, Thurman was an all-around great back, and he's an all-around good guy, and I think it's a well-deserved honor.
Go ahead, Xavier.
Well, we know at some point Barry Sanders is going to get into that ring of honor because he was a great player at Oklahoma State as well. But as Mel said, Thurman Thomas was the reason that Barry Sanders probably even committed to come to Oklahoma State in the first place, one of the reasons that he probably did that. And, of course, after Thurman Thomas left, it was Barry Sanders' team, and it was Barry Sanders' way to go. But for those who I saw on social media who were criticizing this move, I'm willing to bet that they don't know anything about the career of Thurman Thomas, besides the fact that he's the butt of all jokes when it comes to those Buffalo Bills teams that went to 4 straight Super Bowls in the 90s and they lost all 4 of them. That doesn't take anything away from his career, honestly. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a former league MVP. He's one of the greatest running backs of all time. He's one of the greatest NFL players of all time. So I encourage those people to go out and do your research before you try to bury somebody like that again. Make sure you know exactly what you're talking about. I feel the way about this that I felt about during the Last Dance documentary that came out earlier this year, and we saw people immediately go to social media and try to absolutely bury Clyde Drexler because they heard Michael Jordan doing that. If you don't know anything about the man's career, just don't speak on it. And I believe that a good majority of those people who went to social media using their Twitter fingers once again to criticize the fact that Barry Sanders wasn't first and that Thurman Thomas is, you don't know anything about Thurman Thomas's career. Right.
Good point. Yeah, I mean, I have no problem. All you have to do is look at the numbers, 5,001 yards and 50 touchdowns. And what he did in the pros was great. The only thing he didn't do was win a Super Bowl, but going to 4 in a row isn't the worst thing in the planet. To that, he didn't win one. All right, I'm going to make this easy for you guys. Ready? Mel Farr, prediction, only score. Don't need explanation. Okay, you got Cleveland or Cincinnati. I want to score, Mel.
Jeez, OP.
Oh, come on. I know you can handle it.
Cleveland or Cincinnati?
Yeah. Maybe we'll be nauseated with this one too, right, Mel?
I'm going to go 24-14 Cleveland.
You're going to go Cleveland 24 and Cincinnati 14, right?
That's correct.
All right, Xavier, who you got?
I'm going to say Cleveland tonight, 21 to Cincinnati 17. This is one of those must-win games for a guy like Baker Mayfield. And Baker himself always says that when his back is against the wall, he finds a way to come out and be the guy that's on top. He knows that he's on the hot seat where he is. Joe Burrow's not in the hot seat in Cincinnati. He's the future of that organization. This is a must-win game for the Cleveland Browns if they are going to be what many expect them to be this year. I'm not one of those many, but if they're going to be a playoff team, they can't go 0-2.
Well,
not in the division that they play in.
All right, I'll tell you what, guys. I'm going to differ from you. I'm giving Cincinnati a 24-20 win. I like this coming out party for Joe Burrow at home over on the riverfront. So I'm going to differ with you. We'll see what happens, even though you'll both be on different shows next week. Mel will be with Rick, and then Xavier will be on fantasy football. With that said, okay, we have a broadcast tomorrow night, so we'll let Mel get his 2 cents in on about the Los Angeles Clippers choke job. What are your thoughts, Mel?
I couldn't believe it. I didn't see it coming. I wasn't even watching the game on Thursday. I think I was watching, on Sunday. I think I was watching football or something like that. A buddy called me and said, "Man, it's tied up." I said, "What?" I said, "Man, I just looked at it. They were down by whatever." And I said, "Man, the Clippers are going to win this. I'm not going to watch this." I couldn't believe it. But then I started watching the game. I mean, they're short on their jump shots. Their legs were gone. Kawhi had no knee lift running up and down the court. He looked tired. Paul George couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. I mean, it was unbelievable. And, some teams play well when they're out in front. And the Clippers are one of those kind of teams that play well when they're out in front. But when they get behind and they start to have to press, they're not a very good basketball team. And so a lot of their flaws really, really showed up during that series with Denver. I mean, they had 3 opportunities to put that team away and couldn't do it. That's a hard pill to swallow. I mean, I'd rather lose 4. I'd rather get swept than to have a team come back on me when we were up 3-1 and have a team come back and win 3 straight. I mean, I'd rather just get swept and go on home and, we'd be, 1, 2, 3 Cancun. But I didn't see that coming. But again, my Lakers are still in it, and they gotta contend with Denver, and I expect them to learn something from the Clippers, take these guys seriously, and put them away. You got to keep your foot on their neck. You cannot let up at all, because if you do let up and give them just a glimmer of breath, they will take full advantage of it, and they can come back and win the game.
Well, I'll just say the Denver Nuggets. I was the biggest fan in the world for the Denver Nuggets. I was glad the Clippers got knocked out. In my opinion, they're the worst franchise in professional sports history. A .410 winning percentage over 50 years and 15 playoff appearances validates my claim. In fact, I'll even take it a step further, okay? They botched a lot of lottery picks. And for you Clipper fans, which I don't really care about you anyways, your all-time record is 16-59 and 23-83. Am I giving away tomorrow's show? No, Xavier, we're going to have a lot more to say about it. But I was happy that the Denver Nuggets beat the overhyped Clippers. Okay, Xavier, you can end on a brief note. We'll pick it up on the real and the rare tomorrow. And then you can go ahead and close the show out about what your words of wisdom are for the COVID people. All right, Xavier, go on.
Okay, all I'm going to say as far as tomorrow's show goes, without giving anything away in particular, when you screw with the game will screw back with you. The Clippers were arrogant and cocky all year long. They disrespected the regular season. They allowed load management to become a thing, and it should not have been necessarily. Now, you understand why that happened because it worked last year in Toronto, but here's the key thing when I go back and look at it that we all dismissed about that. The Toronto Raptors already had a team culture that was established. The Clippers did not have a team culture. They did not look like a cohesive unit for most of the year, and we dismissed that. And, now they're sitting at home. 1, 2, 3 Cancun. And that's all I'm going to say on that. I will save everything else that I have for tomorrow's edition of The Real and the Rare. It may be one of the hottest and spiciest entrees I have ever dished out in our kitchen.
Don't worry, I guarantee there'll be one well-done filet. I'm looking forward to that for sure on my end, because I don't like the Clippers. If you two haven't figured it out by now, and I know you have, trust me, I'll have a lot to say about this one tomorrow. Okay. Meanwhile, with that said, Mel Farr, why don't you let people know how they can get a hold of you?
I can be reached on all social media at Mel Farr Jr. My email address is melfarjr@gmail.com. And then our website for the things that we do here in Georgia and also in Detroit for the youth is melfar.org.
Xavier McKnight, let people know how they get a hold of you.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at XTMCKNIGHII. The 2 I's at the end are both capitalized. You can follow me on Instagram at XMCKNIGH22. You can send me a friend request and a follow request to LinkedIn and Facebook just by typing in Xavier McKnight. You can find my channel on YouTube just by typing in Xavier McKnight. And once again, you can listen to me here tomorrow night and every other Friday on the WSAN network with Scott when we do The Real and the Rare.
And with that said, I'll even segue to that. For all you individuals who want to listen to this broadcast audio, you can do so via Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. I'll say it again. Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. In terms of following us, you can do so on Twitter at Tribune South. Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune. You can go ahead and follow us there. YouTube channel, Xavier McKnight alluded to it. South Florida Tribune, subscribe for nothing, and you'll get a lot of something. So South Florida Tribune on the YouTube channel. Website, we have a lot of content that goes there, as well as the broadcast, www.southfloridatribune.com. Our email address is southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth, you can find out there a little piece of information for you guys. We have secured the rights to the Motor City Monitor, so we're going to be doing some stuff out in the Detroit area, Mel. So you and I have the ability to go back to Detroit. There was the domain name was out there, and obviously we're going to definitely try to expand our umbrella to the Motor City, a place that we're so dearly to, Mel. So I thought you might be interested in hearing about that. What do you think, Mel? Nice Motown connection. Yeah,
sounds great.
Yeah, so meanwhile, great broadcast tonight, and I look forward to every broadcast Xavier's on. Mel, you know where you stand with me, but the next time Mel and I do a show, we get to do it visually, right? Via Zoom, South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed up, please do so. Xavier McKnight, you're going to close out the show and tell everybody what they need to do to stay safe. Go on.
Yes, once again, before I go into COVID-19, let me just start off by saying that we send our absolute best, our thoughts, our prayers, and our best wishes to everybody who's still in the path of Hurricane Sally, which I do believe has now been downgraded to a tropical storm. The folks in the Florida Panhandle and parts of Alabama and anywhere else where that storm is expected to hit, as well as anybody in the way of those other tropics that are still out there too. This is a very scary time of the year right now. And thankfully, most of Florida has been spared, and we hope and pray that most of Florida and all of Florida will continue to be spared for the most part. But, you really just hope that those storms stay out at sea and they don't make landfall, but sometimes we don't get that fortunate. So we definitely want to send our best to everyone who's in the path of those storms right now. And also, despite the fact that we're continuing to see a gradual decline in the numbers here in the state of Florida and just all around, COVID-19 is still a thing, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that we still have cases that are happening, the fact that we still have people who are dying from this virus that is happening, it tells you that you need to continue to be vigilant and responsible and do everything you can to take care of yourself and everyone else around you, and encourage everyone else to do the same thing. Wear your mask, put on your gloves, don't gather in large crowds, practice social distancing, and just be vigilant and responsible during these times. This thing is not over with. And the last time we saw people let their guard down, that's when we saw the spike in numbers happen again. And we have the fall season coming up, so we definitely don't need to see people doing that, especially with flu season also coming up. The last thing you want to deal with this pandemic is also mixing it in with flu season. So please, let's do our part and let's be vigilant, let's be responsible, let's take care of each other and do everything we can to get through this.
All right, I want to, our final note of the night, I want to pass on my deepest condolences to the family of Jill Shepik. I want to point out Jill Shepik is a lady I got to know real well. Obviously, I'm not related to her personally, but rest in peace, Jill Shepik. She passed away earlier in the week due to Alzheimer's disease. She's survived by her husband, Wayne Shepik. They were married 51 years. And as for the siblings, you've got Todd Shepik, my brother-in-law, and my sister-in-law, Marie Shepik. Their young son, Peter Shepik. And I also want to point out to Dawn Luce, that Jill was her mother, and Rob, and they have 2 kids as well. So I just want to say, Jill Shepik, rest in peace. We're all praying for the family, and God love you. So enjoy the times that we had together, and you can rest assured your legacy as well. Not in our mind. She was at our wedding a few years ago, and one of the nicest people in the world. So meanwhile, on behalf of Xavier McKnight, Mel Farr Jr., my name is Scott Morgan-Roth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. Good night, everybody, and have a great weekend.